Good morning, good afternoon. Hey everybody, how's it going? Good to see everybody, man. That's awesome. I'm out here in the beautiful morning sun. I hope everybody's doing well. Cool, cool, cool. Love it. I just got a notice that Quinn Jacobson is live on YouTube. So I guess we're good to go there. You can see I'm in my trailer house today. I don't know if you can see that or not, but I'm in my trailer house. I figured I'd come out here. It's a little more quiet than over there. And it's a beautiful sunny day here on the top of the mountain. So I think today we're going to get, I don't know, 75, 78 degrees, 25 degrees Celsius or so for the high. Something like that. It's beautiful. Hope everyone is doing well. Let's just make sure we've got everybody in here. It's a little bit before 10 o'clock, actually. So we're coming in here. Awesome. Full house. We love it. We love it. We should have a pretty good conversation today, I hope. I have a couple of things that we can look at. And we can kind of have a discussion about where, like I said in the advertisement there, we're going to, I thought it'd be nice to have a little conversation about presenting your photographs and how some ideas on presenting what I've done in the past, what some other people have done. I can show you different sizes, different materials, things like that. It kind of, somebody queried, and I always usually get somebody asking at least once a month or so, every couple of weeks, a month, every month, whatever it is. Say, hey, I've got my glass plates. How do I present these things? And I'll give you some ideas on that. Maybe turn you on to some different kinds of ways of looking at presenting your work. And we'll talk a little bit about the uniqueness of, for those of you that have shown in a gallery or had some kind of exhibition, right off the bat that these plates require a different kind of presentation than paper prints or, most any other kind of material that you present or type of imagery you present, especially. So if you compare apples to apples, you have color, black and white prints. They can be used tungsten or warmer light to reflect and still look okay. Most galleries use daylight kind of temperature, daylight temperature to view their photographs. So 56, 57, 5800 daylight, 55 to 5800 Kelvin temperature daylight, LED light or something powerful and kind of a high wattage will work really well for ambrotypes. But we'll look at that. I'll kind of tell you what I've done in the past, and it's a real problem. If you think these are going to appear like paper prints in an exhibition or a gallery with a standard lighting, you're going to be very disappointed. You won't be able to see anything, and we'll talk about why that is. The technical aspect. Let me just make sure that I have all this stuff up. The technical aspect of this process plays a lot. The substrate, what you make the image on, what type of light you use, and I'm talking direct positives here, of course, ambrotypes, tintypes, that kind of thing. The substrate you make your images on, the type of light you use to view your images, and the quality of that light or the temperature of that light that I just talked about, they all make a big deal. So if you have never shown direct positive wet collodion in a gallery or studio or showing setting if you've never done that and you don't have the proper lighting, like I said, you're going to be very, very disappointed because they don't look good at all. You can't see them. And especially if if you like those kind of moody images where it's not really overexposed and really bright and there's a lot of silver on the plate, you're going to be disappointed. Oh, good morning, Deidre. And I hope Troy is there with you. That's great. I believe they're in Arizona, if I remember correctly. Yes, thank you. I think the presentation of work is very, very important. I know a lot of people are probably saying, wait a minute, I don't have any work to show. I'm trying to learn how to do the process, or I'm in the middle of trying to put something together to show. And I get that. And we're going to talk a little bit about that too, about ways to defend, and that's a tough word to use, right? Defend your work. It sounds like you've committed a crime and you're sitting in front of a jury and you're trying to defend, trying to justify your work, and you kind of are in a weird way. It's not, you know, and nothing in the pejorative or nothing in the negative. It's just what you're trying to do is you're trying to formulate and put together your story and then present that in a logical, I hate to use the word, but rational way, so the viewer can at least understand what you were attempting to do, right? That's the most important thing. And then the physical presentation of your work. So I thought we could talk about presenting your work, ways to present your work, and then jump into ways to talk about your work or defend your work. So thanks, Deidre and Troy, I hope. I appreciate the feedback. So if you have any technical questions and you're on YouTube, which I see the YouTube feed here, you can put them in the YouTube chat. I'll see those. If you are, in fact, in the StreamYard area, you can post those up on the private chat here, or just post your comment here and I'll see that as well. So, or your questions. So if you have any technical questions, post them up. I'm going to jump right into this kind of presentation. I know we talked about doing the technical stuff first, but we'll just let that come as people come in. I know we're barely 5 minutes in here, so people kind of come in here late. I've had people say, "Oh, I tried to get there for the technical and I was too late, and you were onto something else." So I'm just saying it's all open. If we're in the middle of having a discussion about presentation and you want to drop a technical question, do it. We'll take a break and we'll answer that, or we'll weave it into what we're talking about. So let's do this. I want to show you a quick little clip. I'm going to start first talking about presenting. I've done a lot of exhibition work in wet collodion, specifically direct positive, mostly glass, a lot of tin types too, but mostly glass and mostly black glass. So please keep that context when I'm showing you, especially this first little clip. These are from a long time ago. These plates I made in the early 2000s that they were portraits of Madison Avenue, that work. I don't own much of that anymore, but which is a good thing, right? I mean, if you can sell your work, do it. But so the stuff you're going to see here is not what I have any longer. But so let me do this. Let me say, let's see, that tab is shared. Let me go back here. Let me close that down. So I'm going to show you this. God, look at that young guy, huh? Already. So I'm going to show you this. I'll just let it, hopefully you can hear it. Maybe it doesn't really matter. I'll start from the beginning. I don't know why it jumped up like that. So, hi, I've been working with Joan from the gallery up at UNC, University of Northern Colorado, and it seems that there's some questions about framing and presentation of the work for this show. I wanted to show you the piece that I'm putting in the exhibition and talk to you about potential mounting options. So this is a triptych, quarter plate black glass. And if you come in here, you can see I put a black mat board and brass pieces there, twist ties around it. It's double matted for the height of the glass, and then a non-glare glass, hopefully a non-glare glass over it. Or you can use leave the plates exposed. But if you do that, you're going to have the potential of people touching them and making, giving you problems with the image. So that's the presentation, fully put together, ready to hang, that kind of thing. However big the piece is, however you want to present it. But yeah, it's got to be the plate or the image, the print from the plate, and mount it up in a nice presentation and securely. So I wanted to share that with you, and we'll pass this video around or pass it on to other people. Thanks. So there you go. That's and let's talk about this one real quick here. Sharing YouTube. So let's stop sharing that. So what I just showed there was quarter plate black glass with brass wires drilled through on the back. I think that's from, I want to say 2003. I was struggling. I had all these glass plates. I was struggling with a way to present them. I had a show shortly coming up for that. It was tons of pieces of work, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to present these. I didn't want to put them in some kind of traditional mat where you cut the mat kind of smaller than the image and you come in. I wanted to show the full plate. I wanted to let the viewer see the thickness of the glass, all the artifacts, all that stuff. So I decided I'd use the black background, the black acid-free mat board, mount them on, drill little holes, and take the brass wire through and screw them on the back, and then double white mat for the height of the glass, right? Like that was like 2 millimeters, the glass. So double mat that so you get a little lift off of that, off of the glass, and then use the glare-free kind of a glass to cover them. Hello, Linda, and hello, Will. Welcome. That's good to see you guys. Awesome. Thanks for joining us. So that is one potential, and I had 88 pieces like this, 88 pieces, and when I say a piece, I mean that was one piece. So that was a triptych, and I've worked a lot in diptychs and triptychs, 2 and 3 images per piece. So I had 88 of those. So some of them were triptychs, some of them were diptychs, and some of them were singles. So there was over 100 plates that I had mounted like that for that show. So that's one way to present glass. A lot of times when you're working with metal or aluminum or ferrotypes or tin types, whether they're traditional ferrotypes or the more modern aluminum, we call them tin types too, right? Did I ever tell you this story that people started saying you shouldn't call these aluminum plates tin types? And I kind of pushed back and I said, why wouldn't we call those tin types? And they said, well, because they're not tin, they're not made out of iron or steel. And I said, yeah, well, that's the whole point, right? Back in the 19th century. And if you look in my book in chapter 7, I believe, Substrate, chapter 7, you'll see a whole recipe for making authentic ferrotypes, making the ferrotype batter with gilsonite and, turpentine and melting it and pouring it on what? A steel plate. The steel plate. The steel is not tin. There's a difference there. So they called coated steel plates with asphaltum, they called them tin types. In the UK or Europe, they called them ferrotypes because they were referring to the iron. So tin and steel are different, but they called them tin types because they were cheap, inexpensive, and tin kind of connotes or connotates that idea that something is inexpensive or cheap. So with that logic, let's carry it forward to the 20th and 21st century and say we're using a baked anodized aluminum plate and pouring collodion on that and making direct positives. Those are definitely not ferrotypes, but they could definitely be called tin types because it's the same idea. It's not tin, it's aluminum, but it's cheap and implies fast, kind of inexpensive ways to make images versus glass, right? Glass in the 19th century was extremely expensive. And then you had prints on top of that, which became even more expensive. Hello, Craig. Good to see everybody. I appreciate you guys chiming in saying, hey. So when we say tin types today, and I wouldn't call them modern tin types because now you're implying you're using a different type of sensitive emulsion or sensitivity. Hey, good morning, Mr. Zimmerman. Good to see you in here. I appreciate you joining us. That's great. So when you're using these words to describe materials, we need to be really clear on what we're talking about because people throw these around and you know, and I do it too. I'm guilty of it, right? I call the sensitive layer of quote film on positives or negatives is I call it film, or I call it emulsion, and it's not really emulsion. That's more traditional film embedded, right? This is kind of on top and just underneath. So we throw these terms around. So we have to define those terms. And so when people say tin types and they're showing an aluminum plate, I don't have a problem with that personally. I know some people still do, and they want to say, call that an alumatype or call that a direct positive on black anodized aluminum. I don't care how you describe it. If someone were to show me an image and they gave it to me, they called it a tin type, I could just turn it around and see whether it was an actual ferrotype that they actually baked asphaltum on a plate, or they used aluminum. Either one is fine with me. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but I'm perfectly fine. As long as, I don't care what words we use, as long as we're all on the same page. What I don't like is people using terminology, and it doesn't happen so much anymore, but a lot of times folks would call a bright ambrotype a negative, and they say that here's a printed negative on Ilford or Kodak paper, and then make a contact print of a bright ambrotype, a glass positive that's just overexposed, which is on its way to becoming a negative. But when we say negative in this process, we're talking about negatives that will print on printing out processes or printing out paper. We're talking salt, albumin, collodion chloride, gelatin chloride, all those things, right? Any of the non popping out papers, not Kodak, not Ilford, but the traditional 19th century printing out processes. So when we say negative, a wet collodion negative, we're talking about a real negative, a negative that will actually print on those pop processes or pop papers, or printing out papers or printing out processes. Mr. Dennis Teeth, that's nice. Every image you make is a quintype. Yeah, and you could say that as well too. You know, a David type, a Thylo-type, a Jan type, a John type, a Bogusla type, a Tin type, a Tim type. How about that, Tim? A Tim type. You like that? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we use these types and that phraseology. So when you walk into a gallery and an image is all buttoned up like the ones that I just showed you with the brass wires, I would presume if you worked in the process and you came upon those images in a gallery, you would kind of be able to look at them and say, hey, wait a minute, that looks like black glass. Those look like direct positive ambrotypes. And obviously the label is going to tell you that they're black glass ambrotypes. But when you walk up on a piece that's metal, you don't know if it's an authentic ferrotype, if somebody took the time to make the batter and bake the plates and do all that, or if it's just aluminum that they peeled off the plastic and poured, because they're kind of mounted up. So we need to use terminology people understand. Galleries and people who exhibit and show this kind of work will want detailed explanations, because a lot of times in galleries and exhibitions, buyers, people that come into galleries to look to buy artwork, absolutely demand what the process is, and maybe even the provenance, maybe even the backstory. You know, like they want to know everything they can. If they're going to invest a few hundred or a few $100 or euros or whatever currency they're spending, or thousands, they're definitely going to want to know what it is they're buying, the materials, how it was made, and then they're going to want to know about the artists themselves. And that's kind of the second part of what we're going to talk about here in a minute. But hey, Jerry, it's good to see you in here too. I like that too. Tim types. We should maybe, Tim, anybody named Tim could use that, right? That'd be pretty cool. This is a proprietary process called the Tim type. Wow, what is that? So John says, I prefer ferrotype because I'm actually using real cold steel. Yep, 98% iron content. Online Metals is an excellent source. Absolutely. Yes, you're right, John. And that's absolutely correct. What you're talking about is you're talking about a steel plate for ferrotypes. You're talking about a steel plate which is perfectly, that's why the British and Europeans call them ferrotypes. You're talking about that substrate that you put the asphaltum on. And that's why I say in my book, I call aluminum images made on aluminum, I call them alumatypes, because they're that connotates or connotes the material that's being used. And again, why is this important? It's not important to you specifically. I don't care what we call it. It's a photograph. There it is. It's important in the context of exhibition, presentation, and information about people coming in looking at the work. You know, I'll just sidetrack just for a second. People that go into galleries, right? At least my experience. I started showing my first exhibition with photographs was in 1992, 91 or 92, maybe 92. These were manipulated Polaroid transfers onto cotton and linen paper, and it was about death. It's called Visions in Mortality, and they were Polaroid images that I manipulated. You know, the old SX70s using a pickle fork, and you know, I always use this phrase. I'm a frustrated painter, so my first exhibition, I didn't really have a lot of context of what viewers or people coming in to look at that material, their frame of mind, what are they thinking? And I'm not talking about, 95% of the people coming through a gallery are just there to see the work, kind of enjoy it, and that's great. You want that. I'm talking about that 5% or potential 5% that are actually looking to buy or purchase artwork, and what compels them to purchase the artwork. There's a lot of reasons, right? I mean, let's be honest, there's a lot of reasons. I'm just going to touch on the ones that I've learned about over the last 25 or 30 years, that I've been showing photographs and selling photographs, I might add, that I kind of I've done a little bit of research in that area. And this is what I found. And again, the caveat here, or the exemption, or the qualifier here, this is not the only reasons people buy artwork, okay? Just so you're clear on that. But this is what I found. The 5% or so, and that's about what it is with my shows, about 5% of people that visit buy work. So if you had 100 people come into your show, 95 of them wouldn't buy any work. They just look at the work, and that's fine. Again, you want that. You want people to come in, look at your work, even if they don't plan on or can't purchase any. At least they know what they're at least you're getting that exposure. No pun intended. So let's talk about the 5%. The 5% come into the gallery. They're looking to buy work. What's the first thing they want to know? If they don't know who you are, it's really important that you give some kind of bio, some kind of history about yourself. You don't have to go in, when I was 2 years old, my dad gave me a camera, that kind of thing. People aren't going to buy that anyway. They're going to want to know your major influences on, especially that body of work, but just in general, right? Who you are, what influences you, what drives you, what gets you up in the morning to put that camera in your hand or that plate in your hand, whatever you're doing. And then they want to obviously see the work, right? And again, going back to what we were just talking about a minute ago, they want to see the work. They want to know how the work was made, right? Are these gum bichromates? Are they cyanotypes? Are they carbon prints? Are they made from film or wet collodion? Or what format of film? What process? They want to know all of that. So they want to know the technical and they want to know the personal. Then on top of that, they want a compelling story or a compelling narrative that the work fits, that the work makes sense in. And that's where the big part of this the second part we're going to talk about today comes in. Not just presenting the work, but surrounding that work with the context of why the work was made. The context and the intention, right? The craft and the concept married up. That's what I say. The craft, what you're using, and the concept of why you're doing it, matching up and fitting well together. So those 5% that come in to buy the work or potentially buy some work, want to know those three things: your background, your personal background, the processes and materials, how the work was made, what it is, all that kind of good stuff, and then the specific context or statement around that particular body of work, right? Your work changes. Hopefully you evolve and progress and all that kind of stuff. And so each group, each exhibition, each body of work is going to have probably could be radically different for the reasons and the context of the work. But you'll see, not always true, but you'll see over time, if you study photographers over their lifetime, over their career in photography, you're going to see a similar style pretty much. Some of them take radical changes and it just doesn't work. It's kind of like, I always think of it as, you get these musicians, say you have a rock and roll kind of blues person cross over into like classical music or vice versa, something like that. Sometimes they do some radical shifts. It's still music, but it's a completely different approach to it. So most of the time you'll see a similar theme or big high level ideas that are similar in the bodies of work, but the bodies of work will be uniquely different. And usually people that buy work, collectors, galleries, museums, right? A lot of times you'll have a few times in my career in making photographs, showing them and selling them. I've had a couple of times I've had historical people working for organizations about this particular time in history because of whatever reason they wanted a piece or two. Sometimes it was because of the process, sometimes it was because of the content, and a lot of times it was because they were married together. And there has been, not so much lately because of the pandemic and everything going on in the world with this virus, but there used to be a market that if you could get in touch with the right people and have them see your work, especially that this can't happen online. I mean, maybe they'll buy an inkjet print or something from a copy of something, but when you're talking about original plates in this process or original prints in this process, this is a physical interaction. This is something people have to be there to witness and then to spend the money, right? I mean, we're not talking, we're not talking $100 or $200 usually. I mean, maybe people sell their work for that, but usually we're talking at least several $100s or euros or whatever currency you're in, and possibly thousands, depending on what it is, who you are, how long you've been working, what your background is, all that kind of stuff plays in. It's almost like every time you sell a photograph, you're submitting a CV or a resume, and you're presenting this particular body of work in a certain context and a certain presentation, and you're trying to get the job. I mean, you're trying to sell a print, if you will. I said this many times, I don't go into exhibitions saying that I want to sell a show out or I want to sell this many pieces. It's never about that. That's kind of a byproduct of it. But there are loose framework that you want to work within to give the maximum potential. If you're an artist and you're trying to make a living or supplement your living, and you've invested a lot of time and materials and stuff in it, commercial aspect may be some component of it, right? So you want to set yourself up well enough that you have an opportunity or a chance, right, to make, if somebody's interested in the work, to make a sale. I'll tell you a quick little story. When I had an exhibition right before I moved to Europe. I had an exhibition in Salt Lake City, Utah at the Art Access Gallery. And that ran for a couple of 2 or 3 months there. But I remember on the opening night, I was there, we were wandering around. Somebody came up to me and they were looking at all the pieces. And I didn't have anything for sale. I just didn't, at that particular time, the work wasn't finished. Basically, I didn't have, I mean, there were a lot of images, but I hadn't wrapped everything up. I hadn't completed the work, so I didn't have anything for sale. And it was kind of interesting and strange both at the same time. I had somebody come up to me and say, man, it's like, he said something to the effect, it's like going into he said it's like going into a brothel and not being able to buy anything, something to that effect. That it was weird for him to say that to me, but because I didn't have anything for sale, right? And so, people have these strange ideas. And again, I thought at the time, because I didn't have everything completely like tidied up, and I mean, I had a general statement, I had a general theme, I could talk about the work, all that, but I hadn't really come. This was probably 2006, the beginning of 2006 it was, because I moved to Europe in the summer of 2006. But because I hadn't come full circle and the work wasn't really completed on the conceptual end, at least I felt like it wasn't. And I took that advantage to show wet collodion work in Salt Lake, because I knew I was moving in a few months to Europe, and I'd probably never have that opportunity again. So that's why I kind of I wanted to show it, had a great response. It was amazing. I did demos and all that, but it was just interesting. There are people that see the work and want to buy it and are compelled to buy it for different reasons. But those are some of the reasons that I've experienced. And I tell you, if you go into a show and you have your process down, your materials down, all of that kind of good stuff, and you have a good bio, an interesting short bio 2 or 3 paragraphs that you could read, and it would give the high level of that person, that artist, what they're about, what they're interested in, maybe an influence or two, to give you some context of the person. And then the kind of conceptual or artist statement about why the context and intention, why the work was made, what the intention behind the work is, and you set yourself up the very best. If you are interested in selling work or the potential of selling work, that's kind of the framework you want to have. And there's Tom. I just saw his Tom Types. Yeah, Tom and Tim. Tom Types and Tin Types. Excellent. That's good. So presentation is important. What about gigantic pieces? Like I'd even say, 40 by 50 centimeters, 16 by 20 inches, and maybe even a little bit smaller than that. But let's start with that. What do you do for presentation for those? The second show that I had in Paris, I wanted to do something different. And so let's see if this is it. If this is, no, yeah, it is. I wanted to do something different. Let's see if that's showing up here. It looks like it is. Yeah. This is, these are all 40 by 50 black glass and tintype or alumatype plates. And this was, let me see if, oh, that is expanded. Can I say view full screen? I wanted to get a little bit closer. It didn't help much. Okay, I'll try to point this out. These, I had them set up. These are just aluminum rails mounted in the wall. And this was actually at Santori, which is a really beautiful gallery in the center of Paris. I had them set up rails. And then just in those rails, just slip the glass or metal plates along the rails. And they were supported in the back. So people could walk up literally. They're not covered or anything. And I know that was kind of taking a chance of somebody coming along and really, breaking them, or really, whatever could have happened, I guess, to be honest with you. But so they were slid in so people could walk up. And I wanted to have people be able to see the material, be able to look really close with no obstruction. I just felt like this was the ultimate way to present the work. I think I had, I want to say I had 30 of these, 30 pieces or so. of the big plates, black glass and aluminum both, presented like this. So no mounting, no frames, no nothing, just slipped into aluminum rails, or I think it was aluminum railing, mounted up so they couldn't come out. It was secure and people could walk right up and see those. One of the things I will say about showing work that if you have work that has like those quarter plates that I just the first one with the wire attachment. Here's one thing that I noticed when I had those quarter plates, black glass in the gallery, whatever gallery, that one, the one in the States, I've shown that all over. It's been everywhere. That particular triptych is shown everywhere. I noticed one thing would happen. People with the small images would come right up close to the plate. They'd want to see every little detail. And as I stood and watched people in the galleries do this, I thought, wow, that is super powerful. You are actually drawing people closer to your work, getting closer to the work, right? Then the bigger plates, what would they do? They'd kind of back off. They'd back off a little bit. So you were pushing people away with the big plates and drawing people into the little plates. I really made a compelling argument for those smaller formats, for intimacy, for, you could even throw back to the 19th century and use some of those kind of metaphors around that. But that presentation, not only the way you presented it, but the actual size of the plate made a huge difference, right? Now you see these great big inkjet prints that are, 110 inches wide and 160 inches long. Some outrageous, 4 meters by 6 meters or some crazy size like that. And people are backing off. You can't walk up to a big image really close. You need to back off. So the bigger the image is, you're pushing, you tend to make people stand back. Maybe that's what you want to do. And the small images, you draw people in. So there are a lot of questions to ask when you're presenting work. And before you ever get to present it, you want to be able to answer those tough questions of why does this exist? What was this made for? What is your idea behind this? Who are you? What's your background? Who are your influence? It is a lot like every time you show a photograph, it's like you're submitting your CV or your resume for a job. People are going to evaluate whether, you're not sitting down answering questions, but they've got questions in their mind. Why was this made? Why this choice? Who is this person? What are the influences? All those things. And a lot of times they can't even articulate that, right? You need to present that to them to give them the full round kind of context of it. You don't go into a movie or a theater, a movie house or a theater to watch a movie or a play knowing the context, knowing everything about this. You learn about that when you get there, or you read something about it that compels you, so you get little bits and pieces, and then you see that and you start putting them together. And really what we're trying to do at the end of the day, as a viewer, what you're trying to do is you're trying to get to know the artist. You're trying to see, you're understanding the technical as much as you can, so you know how the work was made. And who doesn't love a behind the scenes documentary of an artist, right? This is how the work was made. This is who the artist is. A lot of times people want to watch the behind the scenes versus the actual kind of presentation of the work, because really, let's be honest, and this is what I've preached for a long time, behind the scenes, you get to know more. You get to understand the work better, whether it's a movie, a play, a sculpture, photographs. This is one of those things where the more the viewer knows about you in the context of the work and about the work, the more the viewer has a chance to engage. Now, a lot of times, people aren't going to like your work. You can do all this stuff that I'm always talking about, and people still don't like your work. That's life, right? That's life. That's why You know, that's why you have choices. And it's not about everybody liking your work. It's about you personally making the work because you're compelled to do it and you almost have to do the work. And then it's about you putting the work out there in a certain context that makes it, I don't want to say easy, but makes it accessible for people that are interested in that topic or those ideas to come and engage with your work and see if they like it. And you're going to find a percentage of those people will engage and like it. And then you're going to find another percentage of those that will actually spend money to own that work because they're so engaged with it. Because it makes them, you know, and again, the caveat here is everybody, all the buyers, everybody that buys artwork, I buy artwork, right? So we can all speak to this to some degree. But there are people who buy artwork that I don't care who made it. I don't care how it's made. I just think it's pretty. I just think it's cool. I just think it's awesome. I think it'd look great in my bathroom or great over my couch, right? Those are different concerns. Those are completely commercial, right? Those are the poster pluses. Those are where you scroll through images and nobody even knows who made them or drew them or any of that. They're just pretty kind of decoration. I'm talking about engaging with the story and having somebody engage with your work on a narrative or a story-based level that really engages them. You've engaged them. They're not bringing their own stuff to the work and saying, oh, that kid would go up on the lake and put that on. And it has nothing to do with that, right? So there are different reasons. I'm talking about the reason of people who buy art, serious art buyers, right? People who are engaged with finding artists, making interesting work, and engaging that. Now, again, a large percentage of the people do not care if you ever make a photograph. A large percentage of the people out there do not care if I ever make another photograph in my life. That's just the reality of it, right? But there are a few that are interested, at least interested, in knowing if you make another body of work or what your next body of work might be, or if you'll come up with something completely different or engage them in a new way. You know, it's not about the masses. It's about those few that you can engage, have a dialogue with, exchange ideas with, and then the rest of them, the rest of the people, even if they don't like your work, if you present it in a way they can understand it, but they don't like the work, maybe the concept will get them thinking about something, right? So there's a lot of ways to approach this, but at the end of the day, it's about, you know, people can't know you or your work unless you tell them about you and your work. And you don't want to tell them about you and your work in a way that's a turnoff, or we've always, you know, we talk about this art bullshit speak all the time, you know, this artsy fartsy language that's really inflated and the ephemeral nature of, you know, and I'm not saying you can't use words like that, but they've got to be real. They just can't be like you're trying to intimidate your audience using these big art words, right? And we know what they are. In fact, there's some generator there that you can do the art speak. You Google it and you go write your artist statement, and it's hilarious. I mean, it's so close to some of the real things that you read. It's like frightening, scary. And those are the people that don't have anything to say about their work. Those are the people that throw up a smoke screen and use that kind of BS stuff to try to say, oh God, I'm not smart enough to even look at this work. You know, there are people that will not go into art galleries because they feel intimidated. I don't know what I'm looking at. Well, man, that's the artist's job. That's the job of the creator to tell you what you're looking at. Maybe even guide you, because you're the creator of the work, maybe even guide you down the path of why you should be interested in this work, or try to make compelling arguments why this work is important. I mean, it is your work. You are creating it and putting it out there for a reason. You've got to have something to say about it, right? I mean, it's got to have some kind of impact. There's a reason you're spending your time and your money and your energy making this stuff. You just have to evaluate what that is and put it out there. John says, excellent point. The most difficult decision I have to make before I shoot a photo is which size to make. Yeah, Of course, you can wipe, clean, redo different sides if it doesn't work, but making the correct decision before shooting says a lot about how introspective you are about your own work and how you apply said context. Excellent, John. I totally agree. And it's everything about, and I'm not, please don't send me emails about me being too strict down the path. What I'm trying to do is give you general guidelines. If you start down the path, the first thing, if you started down a path, you selected that path for a reason. The second thing, if you get down that path 100 meters and you want to take a hard left or a hard right, do it, even if it wasn't in the plans. That is where the liberty comes in, to be creative and free and open about your work. But if you don't have a path you've even started down, if you don't have some kind of map, some kind of reasoning, some kind of idea of why you're doing this, I don't care how you present it. I don't care what words you put up there. I don't care how clean or artifactful your images are, or how compelling the light is, or what size the format is, or what process you're even using. It doesn't even matter at that point. Those are just kind of art for art's sake, random images, right? And yeah, you can look at 19th century, legitimate art movement, art for art's sake. You see that MGM movie symbol that with the lion that comes out and roars at you. Next time you see that, look over the top of that right there. It'll say in Latin, art for art's sake. That is, you can do that. Just say that though. Just say, look, I play with this on the weekends. It's fun. I make random images of, glass bottles and my dog and rocks, and some of them are really cool. It doesn't matter what format I use. It doesn't matter what process I use. They're just visually appealing, and that's fine. There are photographs that are absolutely visually compelling, right? Look at Edward Weston's Pepper Number 30. Look at how much time that's got. Or Ansel Adams' El Capitan, or any of these kind of big images that everyone knows about. Try to find out why they were made, what the reasoning behind them were, all that stuff. It's very compelling for your own work. Very insightful to what gets you thinking about why you're pulling the dark slide or clicking the shutter, whatever you're doing, or sculpting the clay or using the brush to paint, whatever. I don't care what medium you work in. It becomes kind of a moot point talking about what way you're expressing an idea or a thought or a concern. It's more about you putting context and intention around that and presenting it to the world in a way people have a chance to understand. Can you imagine sitting down with a book and opening it up and start reading it? And absolutely, they're just words. They're what is this? Makes no sense at all. What is that? And it's 250 pages, and you're reading it, and you get to page 50, and it's still this what are they talking about? Or sitting down at a movie, an hour and a half, 2 hour movie, and half an hour in, it's just absolutely senseless. It makes no sense at all. That's how people feel a lot of times, and especially this group that I'm talking about that come in to look at galleries to purchase work, or interested in getting work or getting to know the artist. They come in and they see this artsy fartsy stuff or this nonsensical stuff and these words just thrown up there to kind of smoke screen people. Look, they have BS detectors. People know if you're making work from your heart and your head, or just making work kind of because you love the process and it's fun. And say that. Say, I have, that crap Jacobson talks about on YouTube? I have none of that. I just make because it's cool, it's fun, and guess what? I make a little money on the side doing this or that or whatever, Just say that. The problem comes is when people like that don't say that. Now they're competing with you because the general public, the layperson, doesn't know the difference between you and that person. So now you're competing against this enigma that has, nothing to say. It's just kind of free out there, and they just kind of leave it that way because it's easy to do. It's easy to make photographs. It's easy to capture good light on something, or an interesting, whatever you do, an interesting photograph, right? These standalone little one-off images that are just random. I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's a lot easier to do than sitting down and following your heart and your head and trying to put something together, a book, a movie, a song, something that you have to be accountable for making sense. Photographers get away with murder, man. Writers and movie producers and directors and people that work in these narrative-based kind of crafts, or they can't get away with that. Well, some of them can maybe, but mostly they can't. Photographers get away with almost murder when it comes to this stuff. I mean, we can BS people to death. I mean, they're just like people make a photograph, and that's why you see these the whole commercial photography and kind of meltdown, right? Stock photography, wedding photography for the most part, kind of these commercial ventures, because people now can just buy a camera and all of a sudden they're just as good as professional Joe Schmo. I've got my cousin, he bought a Canon 5D Mark III or whatever and got 3 lenses so he can shoot your wedding now for free, kind of thing. Those are marks that just say it's open, it's easy. And as art photographers or people that work in the kind of the non-commercial aspect, we have those in here as well too. We have the people that come in and just kind of make fun images, put them up. They may put words over them somehow, but really they're not telling a story. I'm not talking about photojournalism. I'm not really talking about documentary work. I'm talking about telling your own personal story. And so presentation and also the context going in the gallery. So
I have a question, Glenn.
Please shoot.
You showed us the triptych, and it was framed in black and a double white mat with a black mat background. Are galleries going to come to us or you and say, no, we don't want to present it that way. We specifically want our images, that we display presented in this way here. And then you got to go change it all. For example, I have, this is I'm sorry about the glare. This is a carbon print on glass.
Beautiful.
And I've attached these little corner things here that you can screw into the wall. But if I went to a gallery and handed them my work in this format, are they going to say, sorry, do it again? We want it in a black frame with white mat, et cetera, et cetera. And then the comment I have is there's a book called From Photographer to Gallery Artist by Kara Lane.
Excellent.
She would agree with every single thing you just said.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, everything is.
I like that. I thank you for sharing that book too. I might have to look at getting. Oh, that's like a 2-hour read.
Well, for you, for me, it's probably
Oh.
I'm a slow reader, but
that's awesome.
There's a lot of information in here about what you just said, and she would agree with everything. So my question is, do galleries want photographs? I don't care if they're on glass or paper. Do they want photographs presented a specific way?
Right. That's an awesome question, and wonderful carbon print there, Tim. I love seeing that like that. That's awesome. I love that. So to your question, the galleries that I've worked with, and I've worked with a few, and actually I've worked with a lot and shown in quite a few. 99% of the time, they will never ever dictate to you how you present your work. That will be part of that presentation, part of that reasoning, part of that justification for the work. It's like saying picking out a car, and you pick everything in the car, the materials on the seat, the type of tires, the type of lighting, and then right at the end they say, "Oh, and we picked the paint color for the car." And you wait a minute, right? I mean, that's similar to what you're talking about here. So at the end of the day, that is part of your presentation. You have made a decision to present the work in this way. So it's not just like, God, where can I get this done and get it done and framed up and get it to the gallery? So you have a reason why you have that monk or that carbon print, that statue that you just showed, which is beautiful. You have a reason why you presented that way. You have a reason why you want it shown on a wall that way. And those are the things you have to come into a gallery and tell them. This is the reason. This is why I need them this way and that way. And it's a great springboard to go back to what I was talking about when we first started. It's really important that if you get an opportunity to show in a gallery, do an exhibition, museum, gallery, whatever you want to call it, it's really important that you go in and you need to tell them these are different types of images that need different types of light and a different type of amount of light. And traditionally, if you see, and let me pull this up again so you have a reference point here. Where am I? If you see, or if you notice, now did I close that? No, I didn't. There it is. If you notice here, look at what the lights are. You see those? Those are LED directionals, which are really, really important. Where am I? Which are really important for showing that work. These are all direct positives. So you need 5600 daylight and preferably at least one unit of the like these. These are probably, I'm going to say they're 10 or 15 watt, something like that. Quite high for that. But you need that good daylight light in any way you present them. And hopefully, you know, again, you put together your work in a way that you understand how it needs to be shown, how it needs to be presented, and the context around that. So I'm glad you brought that book up. I should look at getting that and just have as a reference, because those things I think are really lacking in the world of art photography. And I don't know, you know, I'll throw a big caveat in here. I don't know how all this is going to change. I really don't. You know, the COVID thing, will people be going back in galleries? There's a lot of folks that will just never enter a gallery again or be around crowds, or, you know, it's kind of a weird, sad world today for the art world. And yes, great to be online and click through photographs, but again, we're missing so much of all of this if we can't be in person handling those artifacts or looking at them and at least being in the physical presence of them. That means so much. And honestly, I don't want to throw, you know, I don't want to cover or take this with a grain of salt, but honestly, you're going to sell very little online that's original. Well, you know, you can sell inkjet prints and all that kind of, you know, $100, $200 things, you know, here or there. People aren't going to freak out too much about a couple €100 or whatever it is. But when you get up into the, you know, €1,000, $1,000, $1,500, $2,000, $3,000, when you get up into those numbers, this is a physical. I want to know you. I want to talk with you. I want to see the work live. I want to know what the work is. I want to know all that stuff. I think that's going to be kind of the gist of it. I think that's going to be the way you make work. Fortunately for me, I've just moved up here, so I don't have a studio set up. I don't have a darkroom set up. I do have my mobile unit, but I haven't used it. But fortunately for me, I'm in kind of a transition period, and then after that, I'll start working on a project that will probably take me 2 or 3 years. So I'm down the road a ways, and I'm okay. And Jerry made a good comment. You're right. Post-vaccine, 2 years, things will return. I would be cautiously optimistic and say you're probably right. You're probably close to that. Oh, Jan posted that. Excellent. Thank you for that, Jan. He posted for you guys in the StreamYard. I'll put this out on Facebook too, so we have it over there. Yeah, that's good. I think you do your, you know, even if you never plan on showing in a gallery or an exhibition, if you never planned on it, right? I'll never do that. I don't even want to listen to this stuff. I guarantee you, if you're working in photography and you're at all serious, at some point in time, you're going to either get offers or have an opportunity to take an offer and inquire about it. And you're going to want to know those intricate workings that artists never talk about. We never talk about running a business. We never talk about money. We never talk about the reason why we make our photographs. You know, there's a lot of things we don't talk about. So that's really important to know. And so that book that Tim just shared, I think, and I just posted it on YouTube as well, that would be a really good intro book. And it looks tiny, so it's not like it's a big tome of 700 pages. It takes you, 2 months to read. Really good information. I think I mentioned this before, but my graduate degree is actually an interdisciplinary art degree, Master of Fine Arts, an interdisciplinary art, meaning that I circumvented all kinds of different processes and ideas. I sourced all kinds of different materials, watching documentaries on, near-death experiences and psychologists, to watching or reading about the process of sculpting or three-dimensional work, or how painters think, or color theory. Just I can't even, there's so many things, I can't even really come up with a good list off the top of my head. But that word interdisciplinary, meaning that if you never think you'll be, I don't need that. I know I sound like the algebra teacher in high school saying, you're going to need this math someday, but if you take in some of these other disciplines, and you take in, how do I run an art business? How do I run a business as an artist or a photographer? How do I operate in galleries? What are galleries going to ask me for? What are galleries looking for, if you're interested in that, right? And see if your work fits, not trying to make work that fits, but see if your work fits, right? It'll never work the other way. You can't, that's just kind of an unsolicited commercial job that you're trying to apply for. So find what are appropriate galleries for your work, right? The appropriate processes or mediums that show that type of work. Those are really important pieces to know. And that's not just, I know it's not fun doing that kind of business stuff, but at the end of the day, if you have aspirations, if you have desires, if you have goals that you want to eventually, or if you want to show your work now, these are some of the real basic fundamentals that you're going to need to have ready. Because the galleries, as you approach galleries or museums or whatever you're doing, a lot of them, 90% plus, are going to ask you some of these questions, especially the ones that have serious clients or regular clients that come in, look at new artists or emerging artists or even established artists. They're pretty, they're definitely in there. But new artists and emerging artists, they're going to want to know these things. So just keep in mind, it's real important how you present your work and how you present yourself is probably a better way to say all of that, right? So where are we here? So anybody got any technical or anything we want? That's kind of the gist, right? If you want to pursue this, we can talk about this a little more, but that's kind of the idea of saying, I've got 15 or 20 pieces of framed or presentable work. And if it's not framed, I'm just using that word, presentable work. I got 15 to 20 images. I've photographed them or scanned them. I've got digital copies of all of them. I've written a really good statement about what the work is about. I've had people go over it, edit it for me, grammatically, punctuation. If it's translated in other languages, you definitely want to make sure that's correct. And I've got a nice little bio about myself that I've had the same thing done, right? I've had people go over it, people that I trust that know how to write in a particular language, that know the grammar, the punctuation, all that stuff. So now I've got that. I've got 15 to 20 pieces of presentable work. I've got my statement about that work that has none of that art speak stuff in it, and it's authentic and true, and I've got my bio. Now what you're ready to do is you're ready to pack that up and go research galleries, find out which galleries or museums show that type of work. And I don't just mean process-wise. the subject matter. What is it that you're working with, right? So if you're doing, you know, landscapes of graveyards in a particular area of the world, maybe this particular gallery or galleries have shown work like that in the past. That's when you reach out, you write a nice little letter, email, and say, this is who I am. Here's my bio. Here's a sample of the body of work that I've made. And here's the context and the idea behind that work. And I'm interested, I'd like to know if you'd be interested in showing this work. And you start reaching out that way. And if you've got all your ducks in a row and you're hitting the right galleries, I have to throw pre-COVID, pre the virus, right? Pre all of this crap. You would at some point have a gallery or two say, hey, we're interested in your work. I have been super fortunate. I've had most of the galleries that I've shown in actually have reached out to me, which is really weird, and I'm grateful for that. But most of the time, it's you reaching out to them. I have reached out to a couple over the years, but here's the second dilemma. At least for me, it was a dilemma, and this may get you thinking about your work. I just want to put this little bug in your head or a stone in your shoe to think about this. So, Ruth Lubbard's Art Access Gallery in 2006 was my first complete wet collodion show. That was all wet collodion. She actually reached out to me. She saw a piece on the news or something they'd done on me, or the newspaper, or whatever it was. And I said, absolutely, I'd love to show there. And remember, I didn't offer anything for sale in that show. I for many reasons, but let's just say I wasn't ready to sell those plates if they were to sell, if they even were to sell. So I didn't sell anything then. I took all of that work to Europe with me, right? All those plates out of that show to Europe with me. Then in Europe, I worked on the second project, on the Shoah, the Holocaust, the Kristallnacht, that work that I talked about. And then in 2010, Glass Memories at Santaree Gallery in Paris combined those two shows, and we showed the entire body of work together. Now, here's my point. And there I did sell work. I sold a lot of work. What happened was, and I didn't have this forethought, but what happened was some of my most favorite plates that I've ever made were on direct positives. A few negatives, but mainly direct positives, usually black glass. Those are gone. I'll never have them again. They're gone. They're in museums, private collections, whatever. They're gone. One thing I would recommend people thinking about here as you work through this process of telling your story and why do I choose this and why do I choose that, consider, just at least consider, and maybe it won't fit for what you're doing, but consider making negatives as well as positives. Because once you get rid of that direct positive, it's no more. If I would have made my work in negatives, I could not only, let's be honest, not only would I still have that, I could still sell prints from that, right? Edition prints or something. I would still be in possession of the negative. And now I have nothing. I have digital copies. That's all I have. So something to think about as you go through the process. And if you're fortunate enough to sell work, and it's work that you really care about and you want more than just a digital copy, think about making negatives. Think about the context of making prints, doing edition prints. And you can also do more than one show, right? So you can print, you have a body of work of 10 images or 15 images. You make a set of prints, you make another set, another set, another set. You've got 3 or 4 sets of prints that you can send out to galleries, and you can have multiple shows. A lot of work, but you can sell those. You can offer them up. You can, and there's one-offs are not only one-offs physically, but they're one-off in the business side too. They're one-off in possession. You only get one. If it's sold or given away, it's gone. So it's just something to keep in mind as you work in that particular direct positives. And if you plan on showing, and if you plan on specifically selling, some of that work will probably sell. and you'll just be left with that digital copy. So just something to think about. Mr. Dennis Tooth. Oh, Tom says, regarding spontaneous portraiture, what is the proper timing, if any, to discuss the signing of a model release form in the event of the image finds a commercial interest down the road? That's a great question, Tom. Really, really good. Perfect segue here. Commercial, on the commercial side, Tom's asking, when do you get a model release, right? When do you end up doing that? I have to be honest with you. I have an accountant and an attorney. He's one person. He's both flavors. He does my taxes and he advises me on any publications I do, anything like that. The law, and this is only in the United States. I can't speak for other countries or other parts of the world, but the law in the United States says if you're making an image for editorial purposes, which art is, it's your opinion, it's your idea, it's your concern, there's no model release needed. But you're right, Tom. If down the road, you make a portrait of this big guy with a big gray beard and he's sitting on a rock, and come Christmas time or holiday time, somebody wants to buy that to put on a calendar or something, right? For Santa Claus on the rock kind of thing. Then you're in trouble, because now you'd have to go back and get a model release and say, I am selling one-time rights to this image for this magazine or calendar or whatever it is that you're actually making the work for commercial purposes, not editorial or artistic purposes. Then that's when you can run into trouble, is selling their image or their likeness for money for a they're going to make money off of. Do you know what I mean? So in the art world, you can sell art, you can sell your plates, but it's not to someone that's going to make money off of that, right? They're going to be in a museum, in a private collection, whatever. So editorially speaking, or artistically, fine art, which is 98% of my work, I don't do model releases. If I'm doing something like that Levi's job, right? The vintage clothing, I've shown you guys that work. Those are all need model releases, or Levi's would have to get that from them. So great question, though. Absolutely. Yes, Mr. Dennis Teeth asks, is it important to include a photo of yourself along with your bio when you exhibit? Yes, I think it is. I think it's, look, again, going back to that idea of I want to know this, I want to get to know this person as much as I can. And a photograph is, a portrait of yourself is a great way to do the introduction. Here he or she is, or here they are, whatever you want to say. Here's the artist, here's their bio, put it with a bio. They see a face. If they're in the gallery at the opening, or you're there when they're there, they'll recognize you. It's a good thing. It's a great thing, actually. You can always figlotype your digital scans to make more copies. Yeah, that's nobody invented that. Let's put it that way. That wasn't an invention. That's always been making images off of computer screens or televisions or whatever. People have done that long before that, so to speak. It's all been done. Do you ever see that book in the Hebrew Bible, the Ecclesiastes? It says nothing is new under the sun, and nothing is new under the sun here either. So those little copies of computer screens or televisions are nothing new. How much more for the original plate versus a contact print? Excellent. Price, you said. Yeah, Jan, what you're asking about there, are you asking about like an inkjet print from a positive? Is that what you're asking about? You'll have to unmute yourself. I can't unmute you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think about if you're selling your original plate, you must have 1,000. If you sell a contract print from the plate, the negative, you have only 200.
Gotcha.
What's the price
Gotcha.
you set on that, the original?
Yeah, that's a great question. Let's clarify what you're saying here real quick. So if you have a negative, people will not buy that negative. I mean, rarely. Unmute yourself.
Let's say ambrotype then.
Okay. Yes.
Ambrotype. ambrotype.
So typically, an ambrotype is going to be a direct positive that's not reproducible. If you have a bright ambrotype that on clear glass that you want to contact print, then that's a different story. So that original bright ambrotype that would print on paper, that would be probably considered. I mean, if you're when you're talking about original work versus copy work, you're talking a margin of probably 90%, right? So you sell the original for 900 and a print for 100, that kind of thing. Yeah, typically. I mean, it just depends on the buyer. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it just depends on the buyer and the quality of the image. Typically, and I know exactly what you're saying. You're talking about making a copy of a bright ambrotype, and you still have the ambrotype that people like. I get that. Yeah, I get that. It's kind of a tough position, but that's kind of the balance. 90% or more, because you can always now with a negative and making, collodion chloride prints or albumin prints or salt prints and doing additions of those are going to be less than the original positive plate if there were a positive plate sister to that, if you will. But the negatives are still going to command, the prints from the negatives are still going to command a greater price than like a bright ambrotype or a digital knockoff or something like that. So, it's just the market. Just curious, Mark says, just curious if you retain copyright of your work when you shot for Levi's. I did not. How do I put this? I am disinterested. Once I make a photograph and I feel that I'm paid what I want for it, I don't want, they own it. I don't have any, and it's basically because I separate my personal work with the commercial work so clearly that I don't have any attachment to those Levi photographs. I mean, they're fine. I like them. They're great. No problem. Try to do technically what they wanted to do there and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, I am not a commercial photographer. I'm just not. Have I done and do I do commercial gigs? Yes, sometimes. But I'll be honest, that's just strictly for money. I have no attachment. I guess I could get more money if I retain the rights and they ever wanted to use those images again. You've probably got a good point there. John says originals for fine art can be many hundreds to many thousands. Yep. Depending on how well known you are and what prices your work commands. Yep. People love your work and are seeking galleries to get in. You could sell an 8x10 on glass up to tens of thousands. Absolutely. Especially if you're someone, you're right, John. I'll give you a quick story. I was at that gallery on Madison Avenue in New York, Gasconian, I think it's called. I can't remember the name of it. It's in Manhattan there. I think it's on Madison. And Sally Mann had a show there. And we went in. I was hoping to see original plates. This was when she did her work on her husband, and Flesh. It was called Flesh. And what she had there, she was working, I think it was 13 inches by 13 inches, something like that. Like, 13-inch square, if I remember correct. And what she had on the wall were gelatin silver prints from these kind of overexposed ambrotypes. And they look great. They look good. But keep in mind, these were 13 by 13 inch, slightly overexposed ambrotypes that were contact printed on Ilford or Kodak paper and then put up. And they were kind of free frame. They were kind of open frame. To your point, John, those prints, edition prints, I think 20 each. One print, $22,000 US for a gelatin silver print. So that's not even the original. Who you are, your content, your subject matter, all that stuff obviously comes into play. At the end of the day, it just depends. Like John just said it as well. Are you well known? How well known are you? I'm talking more about people, and there are people that come into galleries, and specific, I could name a couple of galleries. They have a base that come in, they say, hey, we have a new artist, an emerging artist, Show opens the 15th of September. You might want to be here on the 14th and go through their work. I had that happen a couple of times. People, they open the gallery a day before the opening, the show, and let people through. Sold a lot of work that way, right? People roll the dice and say, is this work going to be important in the future? Is this artist going to be important in the future? Now, important, you know, you clarify that however you want. This is in their head. These are the questions that drive those kinds of purchases. They're looking, the art is not only for their pleasure or interest, it's also an investment, right? They're investing their money. Yeah, 22,000, good to be the king, queen. Sally Mann deserves that. She does. Sally Mann is a wonderful person, and she's put up with a lot of stuff in her life, believe me, and she deserves that. And I bet you she sold a lot. I did not buy one, just to clarify. I did not pick up a silver gelatin print that day, but it was fun to look at them. It was fun to look at them, and it was interesting to see how the big boys and girls play. And that she is definitely a big girl in that arena. And she is the classic, like, fine art photographer that walks that documentary personal narrative line beautifully in my mind. I'm not hung up on her technical, or some people would say lack thereof, prowess. I think it fits perfectly with her work. I think she describes, and she's a wonderful writer and speaker and thinker and philosopher. I think it describes her work, or complements her work perfectly. And she justifies that too in a lot of ways. I don't know if I ever told this story. I'm sure I have over all these shows, but she wrote me an email one time, and she asked, I think she was asking about buying some or selling some aluminum on the forum board. She wanted to sell a whole stack of 8x10 aluminum for some reason. I said, yeah, she couldn't get an account or something. So I sent her I set an account up for her. And we got talking back and forth a little bit. And I said, do you have my book? And she said, no, I just saw that. And she said, no, I don't have it. I just saw that. And I said, would you want a copy? And this was so funny. She replied, yes, I would love a copy. Will it make my work better? She was concerned with, she doesn't want to improve her workflow or her images, right? So she was like, rather than most people saying, well, it helped me make better photographs. So she's looking at it completely different because she's confident in her approach. She's confident in how she defends her work. She's confident in her technical prowess or lack thereof, right? I know a lot of what Collodion photographers make fun of her and speak bad about her in the context of the technical stuff. But if they just understood her and what she's doing, one time she said, I understood their burn me in effigy in upstate New York. And she was talking about that coffer farm. And I said, yeah, from what I gather, I guess they do. They find some old bone out in the field and they write the Sally Mann Award. And whoever has the worst plate of the, I don't know if it's a competition, I don't know, they give them the Sally Mann bone. I think it's, I know it's probably just in fun and joking, but when you don't understand, that's why it's really important to have context with your work. That's why it's really important to be able to talk about and defend your work, because you can lead the horse to water, you can't make him drink. So for a lot of folks, they just haven't read any Sally Mann's writings or books or statements. There's a reason why she does what she does. There's a reason she actually wants that look and feel, right? It's just a matter of taking the time to read it. And we're so short attention span in the world today, right? If it's not like this and we're flipping through it and we don't have time for it, move on, right? You should read Nicholas Carr's book, What the Internet Has Done to Our Brains. It's an amazing book. It will scare the shiza out of you. It's frightening, and you see that. And every time I think about stuff like this, it reminds me of that book. So Sally Mann completely justified in her work, completely justified in her approach. If you don't believe me, just read. Take some time and study her work and read about her work, and it will give you a good framework for your own path and progress to do that. I agree. Jerry's right. She speaks of loving the defects, what remains video. Yes, exactly. And in that same, I think it's the same documentary, she talks about praying for the angels of serendipity to show up every time she pours a plate. So she is extremely intelligent and amazing artist. I agree, Mark. She's definitely both. And while there has been hype around her, I studied her in undergraduate school. She gained a little bit, or not a little bit, she gained a lot of notoriety in the 80s. I was in undergraduate school in the late 80s. In the mid 80s, she and Jock Sturgis were getting pulled out by the conservative folks in this country about child pornography. So she got kind of pulled in, kind of bad news stuff, but it really elevated her work, her family work, portraits of her kids, things like that. And then she just evolved from there and evolved into wet collodion. So I'm not an expert on Sally Mann by any means, but all the interactions I've had with her, she's been super kind, super pleasant, extreme. Yeah, just a great person overall. So if you want to make fun of her artifacts, I guess you can. If you don't like her work, yeah, there's a lot of folks don't, but a lot do. That's your call. It's a perfect way to say that it's important to have context to your work. It's important to have reasons why you do things. But in Sally Mann's case, you can't make everybody read her statements or understand why she makes crappy plates, right? That's what we get. Absolutely, Jerry. I'm glad you like the Sally Mann stories. Yeah, it's great. And you're right. It's true, because I've had a couple of people try to call me out and say, "Oh, what about Sally Mann?" And then I'll push back and I'll say, "Do you know about Sally Mann?" "Well, I've seen her work. I've seen her plates, The one exception I always get is the Antietam battlefield and the tree with the scar on it. Those are exceptional plates for whatever reason, but everything else is garbage. But I'll push back and I'll say, "Do you know Sally?" "No, I've seen her work." "No, I mean, have you read her books? Have you listened to her talks? Do you know where she's coming from when she's making her work, or what she's thinking about, and those ideas that we've just spent an hour talking about?" And they'll every single time say, "No, I haven't." If they won't answer, or they'll say no. And that answers my question. You can put everything out there, and you're just going to have some folks that just aren't interested, don't care, whatever. And you don't need to concern yourself with those people. Those people aren't going to buy your work. They're not going to be, interested in what you do next. None of that. You're interested in the people that connect with what you've put out there. And it's not about connecting with everyone. You're never going to do it. And then even the ones you connect with, at the end of the day, they're just going to be waiting for you to make more work and see what you come up with. And a lot of times, we'll talk about this next time maybe. A lot of times, after you do a major body of work, you have this crash. I mean, a major decompression, a major crash, and you start thinking about new stuff or a new body of work, and it can be very depressing. It can be very daunting. And I bet you we could talk to folks in this room right now that have experienced that very thing. I know I have. I'll share next time a couple of ways I've overcome that. And what I mean is, when you spend a year or 2 or 5 on a body of work, then you have an exhibition and you show that work, and it's kind of finalized because you sell some of it, or you publish a book. You have closure on it. You close it up. Then you're left with, this has consumed your life for so long. Then you're left with this big hole. You're like, God, what do I do now? Right? It's a very, it took me months to decompress the first time this happened to me. It's the first time that I felt like I'd go out and make a photograph and I felt like I was a fraud, like I'm pushing it, like I'm being influenced commercially now, or I'm feeling like a fake, because I'm looking, what's the next thing? It's got to be better than that first thing, right? You have this in your mind. And it took me a long time to push that stuff out and begin to not care anymore, because the first time you're ignorant, you don't know. So you don't have that in your head. But after you go through that experience, then you have all this stuff in your head that, oh, they like this, that sold, that didn't. I mean, you can't get it out of your head. I mean, I'm no superhuman, right? I have those same emotions and reactions to money and to adulation and to people, what people like or what they don't like. It's just a tough thing to get over when you've had some success and now you have a big blank slate in front of you and you don't know what to do. And then you start trying to make work and it feels forced, it feels phony. And that's why you just have to back off. And I'll talk next time about that. I think that's a good topic, a little bit anyway, to share a little bit with you. Hold Still, Sally Mann, a memoir with photographs. Yes, absolutely. Is that the one where she talks about she grew up in, I believe, in Virginia, the state of Virginia in America? I know she lives there now. She's got a big ranch down there, a big homestead. I think one of them, she talks about growing up in the South with African-American maids and things like that. And she talks about how she really gets into my kind of area of interest, right? Othering. She always has. Sally Mann's been an influence on me before she ever poured a plate of collodion, right? Or a collodion plate. So she started delving into this marginalized African-American slavery. You know, she did all the work on the kind of the Civil War and the ideas behind, you know, a country turning on itself. And but definitely Hold Still, definitely all those books, if you can read them, if you have time, watch the documentaries, get to know artists and successful ones. Some of them are just purely commercial. Sally Mann is not. She works from her heart, no doubt about it. And she has great commercial success, but she pays a price for that too. So Southern girl influences. Yes, that's it. Yeah. Oh, yes, her life story from a personal point. Stories about her nanny maid. Exactly right. Yeah. I have so many things in my head. I thought that was the one Jerry's talking about. Hold Still, Sally Mann. Definitely recommend that. Do we have anything else? You guys want to share anything? Talk about anything? That was my kind of rant. Oh, stop sharing. Holy hell. What am I doing? There we go.
I have a technical question. So regarding contrast, 3 real quick questions, and we can talk about this some other time if you don't have time. But, number 1, what is contrast? Number 2, as you stop down a Petzval lens, say from f3 or 4 to f16 or 32 even, as you stop that lens down, do you increase contrast, decrease contrast, or maybe the contrast doesn't change at all? And then the third question is, when you redevelop a glass negative and you're building density, the longer and longer you build that density and the more dense it gets, do you increase contrast or not at all? I have a feeling that you do increase contrast as you build density with the glass negative. So the blacks get really black and you kind of lose your midtones, it seems like. That's just my impression. What do you think about those 3 contrast questions?
Awesome questions, Tim. Those are great. And they're so good for the fact that we go back to these words, what we say in English, vernacular, right? Words we use to describe certain activities or ideas. And specifically in photography, it's really difficult. So when we talk about what is contrast, you have to think of contrast as the range between the blackest blacks and the white paper or clear glass, however you want to see it. So the thickest silver to no silver. And what you want to do in between there is have a gradation going up through. Now, a high contrast image would be an image with big black pieces and clear glass, big lumps of silver and clear glass, or big printed pieces and clear white paper, right? That'd be high contrast. If you think of the Italian Caravaggio, the painter, he painted high contrast, right? He really, really contrasty. So you see images, you know, a face here, and then it's black around the back, and then doing, you know, John the Baptist's head or whatever. Look at Caravaggio. That will answer your contrast questions. That shows you contrast. Then as you fade out and you get flatter, you start lacking the contrast. Those gradients become more subtle between dark black and clear glass. Then you start getting this full range, like the HDR images, right? The digital images where you shoot a third, and a third, and there's no shadow really. It's all kind of lit up. That flattens everything out. So what you're trying to achieve with contrast is you're trying to achieve whatever the image is appropriate for the image is the densest density, the most silver in this case on the plate, and then going all the way to the void or the clear glass areas. Now, when you're talking about redeveloping a glass negative, what Tim's talking about there, he has an image he just pulled out of his wash after he processed it. It's a bright ambrotype, and he wants to build that density up. He wants to build where there's silver, he's going to stain it and put a little more silver to make it thicker and build it up so less light goes through it, right? So where this would have been kind of a gray on the paper, he builds up with the redeveloper where very little light goes through and it's bright white paper. So he's just increased the contrast. And you're right. If you've ever done this, Tim, just keep redeveloping. Do 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 cups, and you'll just go to a blob of silver and clear glass. I mean, and you'll just have almost like a graphic. You'll have that black and white, and there won't be any in between. That's the most extreme case. That's high contrast. And then the flat stuff is where you have no blacks. It's all just kind of washed out grays, no real bright whites. It's just kind of overall kind of washed out. Usually underexposure and overdevelopment will show you that easily. So you want this perfect balance. When we say contrast and density, we're really talking about the same thing. Because contrast, we're talking about the amount of buildup in the highlights and the lack of silver in the shadow or void areas. And that range there, you know, the zone system, you know, 0 to 10 kind of thing. That's what we're talking about. So yes, you can build up density to any amount you want. Good questions though.
Then the other question is, as you stop down the pencil lens.
Yes, that's right. Okay. Aperture has nothing to do with contrast. Contrast comes from the light on the subject or scene. Aperture has everything to do with depth of field, of course, right? You stop it down, you increase your depth of field. Where you know, you increase your image circle and you increase your depth of field. Sharpness can appear as contrast, building contrast sometimes. The sharpness of stopping down can kind of seem like it's building contrast. It's not really. Your light, your development, and the amount of silver on, in this particular case, the amount of silver on the plate will determine where your contrast is going to fall. Whether it's a flat image and lacking density and clear void areas, or whether it's really hardcore black and silver and clear glass. And the only way you're really going to get that last scenario is with redeveloper. That's the only way you're going to get it, because you're never going to pull a plate out of the camera. You can have a good foundation negative, but it's not going to be like redeveloping. I mean, that you just punch that, you just build that silver up, and literally you kind of clear the void areas out to complete clear glass. You know, you just wipe it all out. So you build up wherever the light struck the silver, there's a little bit of silver, you build on that. Wherever it didn't hit, you've got clear glass, and you just find that range. But f-stop apertures, Waterhouse stops, nothing to do in theory physically with contrast. It may look like it's a contrast build because it's sharper, or you may change your exposure a little bit and went a little longer and build a little more density that way. Things like that will happen. But no, focal or Waterhouse stops or aperture, the size of the opening of the lens, the amount of light coming through is only going to change your depth of field and, of course, your exposure. What's in focus, what's not. I hope that does it. Cool. Jerry asked, Jerry asked, asphaltum mixed with mineral spirits on clear glass ambrotypes archival. It's better to varnish first. Yes, that's it. Another good one we get quite a bit, which is Jerry's asking, in my book, I have this formula for black or for asphaltum to mix. I say like 1/3 and 2/3, 1/3 of asphaltum gilsonite and 2/3 turpentine or mineral spirits. And what you do, you mix that up to make it a little, you know, gilsonite. I use the angel gilding. It's really thick, so I dilute it down a little bit. You pour it on the glass, and you can either do it on the glass side or the collodion side. And Jerry's asking about the collodion side. What's beautiful about pouring it on the collodion side is you get to peer through the glass. And that interaction with the asphaltum and the silver makes a beautiful bronze, red, brown color. It's just absolutely stunning color to me. I absolutely love it. Jerry's asking, though, is it best to varnish first and then asphaltum on the collodion side? And yes, that would be, if you want to play it safe, and I say if you're going to sell work or if this is going out somewhere where you no longer have control of it, I would definitely varnish and then pour. If you want to be bold like me, try that raw silver and asphaltum, and they're beautiful. I've had some for 10 or 12 years, and I've had no peeling. The problem comes when you make the ferrotype batter, and you can use that to do the same thing. It's basically the same thing. If you mix that a little bit raw off and you don't have enough plasticizer in there, the balsam in this case would be the plasticizer or the polyurethane and the ferrotypes, that asphaltum over the years will harden and break off or peel. And if you have it on the collodion side where the silver is, you'll take the silver image with you. That's what people complain about when they say it's not archival. If you use something like an angel gilding product, you can go to angelgilding.com, I think, or some variation thereof. Those are perfectly balanced gilsonite. They have the plasticizer. Like I said, I've used it for 15 years, and I poured it directly on collodion over a decade ago, and the image still is absolutely beautiful. And the color is just, God, that's my absolute favorite color of positives, is clear glass ambrotypes with asphaltum poured on the raw collodion side. I know people are going to freak out about that, but they are visually, they're my favorite. I mean, it's just amazing. Yes, and just like the subject is alive inside the glass. Jerry, that's perfect. That's exactly right. It's a good analogy. It's like looking at one of those amber stones with a little insect in there still kind of moving around. Peering through that glass gives it a certain depth, and the warm color, I just love that color, that red, brown, gold. It's like it's toned, you know? It's a very different experience. If you've never asphaltumed a clear glass positive, you should try it. Just do some personal ones. Just do something fun. Pour it on the collodion side, varnish, pour it on the collodion side, make one, pour it on the glass side. See what you like. Another one more thing about that. Another nice thing is if you pour on the collodion side and you peer through the glass, then any text on your shirt or anything like that is going to be, you know, it's direct positives are laterally reversed. So things are backwards. So if you turn it around and you look through the glass, you're going to read your t-shirts or writings or anything properly. I've actually had emails about people looking at my work and writing me several, not just one, not just two, but several emails over the years that I've literally got it disturbed people so much. They wrote me an email saying, why is it that guy's t-shirt? Why does it say Metallica backwards? I don't like that. Can't you turn that around? You know, kind of thing. So not that we're trying to please the public. I'm just saying that that's another benefit, quote unquote, of peering through the glass. And yes, Yeah, they do definitely look alive inside the glass. So, let's see. Anything else? Let's any other technical questions since we're doing those? I'd be. These are fun. They're great. They're actually great questions. Really important ones that even Here's the thing about learning. We reiterate and reiterate. Believe me, if you're in here and you've been here for a while and you've listened to me ramble, oh, I've heard him say that before. I've heard him say that before. You're going to hear that. And once that becomes part of your nature in this process, you just listening to this kind of stuff will improve your technique, will improve your ways of thinking about things. People sharing ideas about how they approach this work is really, really important. And especially right down the rudimentary level, safety, handling, all those kinds of things. But, we mostly talk about results, right? What does it look like? Is it archival? Sometimes we talk about, is it safe? We did a whole thing on that one time. But we just want to learn. And to learn, we need to reiterate. There's so many spinning plates in this process that hearing it once is never, ever enough. Yeah, Jerry, welcome. Please join us. Jerry is I think he's in Alberta. He's in the same time zone as me, Mountain Standard Time here. So you have no excuse, Jerry. You've had time for coffee. So no, it's great having you. I'm glad to see you were here today. So anything else? That's an hour 45. That's good enough for me. It's nice and sunny. I think I'm going to go over and run my water well. I just got my septic system done, and we're getting ready to set the foundation. How about that? I hope to be in my home. Oh, big, huge, gigantic, fingers crossed, by the end of October. Before the snow flies, I hope. Oh, Tom says, during a final focus before exposure, do you look for the darkest shadows to be target to watch during development, or do you just watch it? Good question. I love those kind of questions, Tom. During final focus before exposure, right? So he's saying you're under, you got everything set, and you're just checking that final focus, making sure if it's a portrait, you got the eye, your head brace, everything's good right before you go pull the plate to make the image or put the plate holder on or whatever you're using. So do you look for the darkest shadow to be a target to watch during development, or just watch the entire plate? Here's my methodology, Tom. When I see this scene on the ground glass, of course it's upside down and backwards, right? So the head's down here and the body's up here. I'm usually looking at their forward eye if it's a portrait. Like I'll have their head tilted a little bit and I look at the forward eye, sharpen that up. I actually look for the opposite, Tom. I look for the highlight. So they have a silver necklace on, they have a bright cheek over here, a spot on their forehead, or they have something on their clothes. I look for the very brightest highlight that I can see. I'll tell you why I do that. I make the exposure, go in the darkroom, pull the plate, I pour my developer on. And right after I pour my developer on, get the plate covered, I drain that excess off back into my cup, and I pour that back on, and I leave it as a meniscus. Leave a meniscus. What's the translation for meniscus? Leave like a bubble of developer on the plate if I can, and just let it sit there and run around. I catch that excess because it's got a lot of free silver from the plate on it, and it helps a little bit, right? It helps with a little bit of density, and if your exposure is right, it's really nice. So I pour that out, I dump it off. I pour that meniscus on there, and then I just watch. I start counting 1, 2, 3. By around 3 seconds, especially if it's warmer, I should see the very highlight that I just looked at on the ground glass 2 minutes ago or a minute ago. And that should come in around 3 to 5 seconds. If that comes in around 3 to 5 seconds, I know my exposure is spot on. So I go through 7, 8, 9 seconds. I see midtones. So I see the midtone of, down here where the light changes on the neck, shadow to dark. I look at that midtone. And then around 12, 13 seconds, I start seeing shadows form where it goes from light to dark. I see now the shadow forming. And around 15 seconds or so, I'll dump that developer off and run the water on it. And I'll have bright whites and void black areas. What if I went longer? If I kept going, I poured it on there, 15, 20 seconds, 30 seconds. Now all that silver over those black areas will develop. You'll have unexposed silver develop on the plate. That's called veiling. Now your whole plate's going to look flat and nasty. It's usually you're underexposing and you're pushing the development, or you don't have enough acid in your developer. But you can take a cotton ball and water and wipe that right off. You'll basically have the same thing, but you don't want to do that. You want to call your highlight in 3 to 5 seconds, your midtones in 7 to 10 seconds, and your shadows starting to form around 12 seconds. If that doesn't happen, pour another plate and go back and adjust your exposure, either more or less. If you pour the developer on and the highlight flashes right up before you even pour that off, way overexposed. If you pour that on, 3 to 5 seconds, no highlight, 10 seconds, barely highlight starting to show at 10 seconds, you're underexposed. So you just have to kind of work through that. But that's a great question. That's my methodology. Speaking of archival, Eric, how you doing, Eric? Good to see you in here. Speaking of archival, can you talk about the final rinsing? Do I harder flow like spray bottles, much less time? Yeah, yes. That is a great question. Eric, what are we trying to do when we're washing the plate? He's talking about the final rinse. What happens right before the final rinse is that you're using some kind of fix, sodium thiosulfate, ammonium thiosulfate, some cyanate, or cyanide. So you're using some fix. What does that fix do? That removes all the unexposed silver and leaves the exposed silver. It will, KCN in this case, it will start eating the actual silver away if you leave it in there long enough. But in this case, we take all the superficial unexposed silver away. So if you're using sodium thiosulfate versus potassium cyanide, they work a little different. The first salt binds up the silver and attaches, and think of it as kind of a gritty surface. It kind of holds it, and you need the water to kind of loosen it and wash it away. It takes longer. There is better results, obviously, with agitation. I would never spray an image. I mean, now you're talking that wet emulsion, that wet collodion, if you will, can split. It's tender, right? You know how tender that stuff is. It's like wet toilet paper. So I wouldn't spray it. I would just, best case scenario is you have running, flowing water and just agitate the pan and change the water out. That's the best way to do that with sodium thiosulfate. With KCN, it's a little different. It doesn't embed. Think of it as like little roller balls rolling on the plate. You can just kind of wash those off. A couple might get a little bit jammed up here or there. Put it in a plate of resting water for 5 minutes, and those will lift right up. It's a much more effective way to remove the unexposed silver. It takes a lot less washing than the thiosulfates, but it doesn't. You can do a fine job with the other fixers. It's just going to take a little longer and maybe a little more agitation and more water refreshes to really archivally fix those images. You can see people's plates that are not fixed properly will start dulling down. They'll start changing colors. Eventually, they'll go black or brown or some variation of that because there's still silver, unexposed silver embedded in there that's now being exposed. So the idea is to wash that out quickly and efficiently. That's one of the reasons I've said many times why I use KCN. I'm a little bit concerned about water usage over the potential safety hazards of KCN. So I can mitigate those safety hazards, but I can't replenish water. And I live in the Western United States where we already kind of have a water problem. So less water. And on top of that, I'm in the field. I can only pack 20 liters of water. So I'm going to be, I'm going to be fighting that regardless. So I don't want those long wash times. I don't want to use that water. And I want that color the KCN gives me. I want that spectral sensitivity, as they say. for printing, for all that kind of stuff. And I like the color of direct positives with KCN as well too. So good questions, really good. I know Eric, Tom might be new, but I don't know if Eric's new. But yeah, you are very welcome, Boguslav. I appreciate you being in here. I appreciate seeing everybody come in every Saturday to hear me ramble on about stuff. But you know what? I told my wife the other day, I said, you bring up what collodion or photography, extemporaneously, I'll stand up and just start rambling. It doesn't even matter. I love it so much. Oh, you live in Arizona. Oh, you might want to look at getting some KCN. And you may, I mean, or not. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're, you know, I know people, just a quick safety note. I know people that refuse to touch cadmium bromide and refuse to touch potassium cyanide. I get it. That's okay. That's perfectly cool. I just want you to know the caveats, whether it's water usage or whether it's, you know, sediments in your collodion or whatever it might be. I just want you to know that those things are going to happen. And I get email, not, you know, I use the metaphor all the time. Sometimes I get email that says, I just went over to X and X and they don't have that in their collodion bottle, or they only they didn't wash long enough for their plates. And you come to find out they're using cadmium bromide and they're using cyanide. And I have to describe and tell them the difference. The good part is that you're a little safer than they are. God forbid they ever had an accident. The bad part is you're going to use more water to get an archival plate, and you're going to have that sediment in your salt bottle. Oh, you're so kind, Linda. We love you when you're rambling, Quinn. I got to put that one up. How about that one? I love it. Thank you so much. And I love to ramble. So if there's anything you guys want to bring in next week, I will put on my notes that we're going to do a little discussion about we're going to do a little discussion about this post-show depression or decompression or depression. I want to go in, I'll put my thoughts together. I want to go in a little bit about how, and I won't take very long on this next week, but how a couple of things that I did to overcome, and you may even be able to use them to get started making a body of work. I don't know how many people here are planning or have planned or maybe even have executed a body of work. I know a couple of you are or attempting to. I would like to facilitate, along with those technical questions, I would like to facilitate and help and have people join in on helping people work through projects. And if you want to come in here and have some critiques on a couple of plates, please do. I was going to try to get somebody, a couple of guests lined up, but I've got work next week on my land that I'm not going to have time to do that. So one more week and then maybe I'll look at guests. We'll see what happens. But so I'm open to any subject matter you want to do or talk about. So if you want to come in and share some work or get some feedback, there's a great group of people, and we have a bunch over on YouTube watching too. So there's always people watching these shows and wondering and wanting to ask or get involved. Thank you so much, Jan. It was great to be with you guys. I'm going to leave you. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, and hopefully I'll see you next Saturday. Ciao, ciao. Bye-bye. Thank you.